Hello, my name is Dr. James R. Golding, and you're watching A Natural Healthcare Alternative, the program dedicated to your health, longevity, and well-being. Today's topic is environmental toxins and their effect on your health, the battleground for your health, that of your family, and your well-being. Now, we're all aware of the fact that toxins or poisons from the external environment are having some sort of influence negatively on our health and the health of our children and the offspring in the future. We all kind of get that, but we don't have a full understanding of the degree that these toxins play as far as a role for our health and how they're influencing our well-being. And I hope to cut through all of that today so that it's not just a tale of woe, of we're being poisoned, and we are, but what you are going to do about it to take the high road, to clear yourselves out and kind of control your environment and that of your family for your own health, longevity, and well-being. Regretfully, we're poisoning our world, and part of it is naturally occurring, and part of it is, and the main part of it is what we're doing to ourselves. I mean, we all understand that air pollution isn't good for us. It affects your lungs, or smoking isn't good for you. So these would be gross examples of environmental toxicity and poisoning. But I'm going to take it all categorically through the things that we need to basically understand for control. Number one, let's talk about air in our environment. The air quality in New Jersey is poor at best. And there's not too much you're going to do to control that other than on a personal level. You're going to cut down on the driving as much as possible. You're going to obviously not smoke or be in an environment in which there is smoke. You are not going to, and naturally we're kind of cutting down on driving with the cost of oil the way that it is right now. But these are things that you're doing on a personal level. 90% of us spend, 90% of the time, most New Jerseyans are spending their time indoors. 90%. So it's not so much what's going on in the external environment as in the microcosm of our own internal environment. So things like dust, dander, allergens, you got new carpet, the vapor that comes up from the new carpet, cleaning products, the vapors that you breathe in, all of these things become magnified in a closed-in environment. So using natural cleaning products, baking soda, vinegar, versus a lot of these household compounds that are caustic and toxic are well worth your time, energy, and money. As far as the air goes in your house, making sure that the filters are clean if you have a duct system for hot air and air conditioning, making sure that they're clean. They also make filters now that are basically hypoallergenic filters that really filtrate to a much greater degree the air that's circulating within your own home. What I use in my home and what I recommend for my patients is something called a flare unit. It's made by a company called EcoQuest. What that unit does, and that is really a serious piece of machinery, it costs a few $100s. But what it does is it electronically cleans the air in your home and changes it to a negative ion concentration. That causes particulate matter to fall out, causes toxicity to come out of the air. So 90% of the air that you're breathing then is as clean as it can get for an internal environment. So that's an important aspect to consider, and I want you to invest your money that way because there's a lot of different products out there, but that one is truly a cost-effective product. The next avenue that we're talking about is that we're going to talk about water, and it's really a major pet topic of mine. Whether or not you have well water, if you have well water, do not go under the assumption that since you have a well, that means that the well is either that it's pure and it's going to be good and there's going to be no toxic or poisonous effect. Sometimes there's poisonous minerals, meaning like liquid radon, which is concentrated in central New Jersey, that can actually get into your water. So these need to be tested. You need to test for organics, not just whether there's a high bacterial content in there. You need to have your well tested by a lab that's going to check for organics and toxic mineral accumulation, because you may think you're drinking good for yourself, but you're not. So it's worth getting checked, and I hope that your well is good. So even though you have well water, what you're going to do is you're going to have that tested for toxic minerals, organics that are in there that are carcinogenic. Sometimes they find that factories that are miles away that may be polluting into, it goes down into the aquifer, and you may be drinking the water that is toxic, okay, as a result of poisons put in there miles and miles away. It has a tremendous ability to travel a long way and a long distance. Something that for most of us, we have city water. And by having city water, we're either getting it from aquifers or wells, we're getting it from rivers, we're getting it from the canal, we're getting it from our reservoirs. Just because it's from these sources doesn't mean that it doesn't have a high degree of a toxic component, because there's a lot of runoff there, and we have pharmaceutical medications that have been detected in there, all kinds of chemicals, anywhere from hydrocarbons to oils to this to that. It may look clean, but that doesn't mean it's absolutely clean. So for the last time, I'm going to give you and tell you what to do as far as what you can do at home. You're going to get yourself a reverse osmosis system. It is made by GE. It is cheap, cost-effective. It runs about $250. You can put it in yourself, or a plumber can put it in. It generates about 2 to 3 gallons of clear, clean water, and that's what you're going to use for your cooking and your drinking. Now that brings together another thought, and people say, well, I buy spring water. There's nothing the matter with spring water, and I like the taste of a lot of different spring waters. However, something that they find out now, which is of concern, is that they find the longer the water's been in a plastic bottle, some of the plastic leaches out into the water. So here we are, once again, you're trying to do something good for yourself, and you have plastic leaching into the water that you're drinking, supposedly to keep yourself healthy and better and cleared out and cleaned out and all of that. So if you're going to go with bottled water like that, it's best to have it in a glass bottle, or if you're going to have it for a long time, you transfer it into there. I was reading something interesting. They said 19 million pounds of plastics from just bottled water alone were displaced into the environment. That's not just the ones that have been recycled normally. We're putting it into the recycling process. That's what's been thrown out inappropriately. So in our forests, in our waterways, we're getting all of these water bottles. That's not part of what we're trying to do. We're trying to drink water to keep ourselves clear and healthy, and get away from the sodas, get away from the refined carbohydrates. But we don't want to do it at the expense of our environment. So there you go. You have reverse osmosis system, and you're going to go get one of those Swiss-made water bottles that look really cool nowadays that they have at Eastern Mountain Sports. So that's the way to go. Get rid of the plastic, get rid of the toxins and poisons. Then that's what you're going to do as far as the water is concerned. Now we come to a big issue, which is food and the food quality that we take in. We need to cut down on the sugars in our diet. There is, since the 1930s, there's an extrapolation on the increase in adult onset diabetes and the amount of refined sugars that we're taking in our diet. It's not a mystery. The more sugar in a refined basis that you take in, the more likely it is that you're going to have a blood sugar problem. So once again, you're in control. What you do with it is your own. Cut down on the refined carbohydrates, the refined sugars, and get outside the diabetic quotient as much as we can. Also, there's the aspect of obesity. We're becoming more of an obese society. People are getting more sedentary because we're taking in too many refined carbohydrates, too much fried food, too much fast food, and we're a fast food nation, just like that movie that was made, is these contribute towards toxicity and sluggishness and numerous other disease processes in the body. And how it relates to toxins is that toxins are bound to lipids, lipids meaning fat cells. So most of the toxins that you take in that your body accumulates, they get attached to your fat cells in your body, and it builds up and builds up and builds up. Also, it starts to build up in your liver. So we have two accumulation sites for toxicity in your body: your liver, which is responsible for the smooth flow of the energy in your body, and then we have your fat. So we need to reduce the weight down so that we eliminate a lot of the sites for the toxins to come. 10 million people live within 1 mile of a Superfund EPA toxic waste site. And these have serious consequences as far as our health and well-being. We need to make sure that we eat more fresh vegetables and fruits, which leads us in the toxic direction to, what is this whole thing of GMO? What does that mean? GMO means genetically modified food. That means scientists are altering with the food on a genetic basis to make food more desirable to what is seemingly more desirable to the supposed American public and the Americans' needs. 40% of all of the food consumed in the United States at this time has been genetically modified. In Europe, all of the European nations, none of the nations allow genetically modified food. Now, why is that? Why is it that we're so smart, we should be eating all the genetically modified food, and they're not? They're totally outlawed it. Why is it recently that in Korea, they've having riots in Korea because we're allowed to we're allowed to import our beef now to Korea? Why is the average citizen up in arms? They're not the beef-producing citizens in Korea that are up in arms. They're the average citizen, the average carnivore citizen in Korea, because the Korean people are smart enough to know that they do not want genetically modified beef. It's as simple as that. Now let's delve into a little bit more. What started out as an innocent thing, and that innocent thing is that we're going to modify the genes of your tomato so that your tomato looks more red. It lasts longer on the shelf life. It's more visually appealing. That was the way in which it started. Then they started to alter the genes of the vegetables and tomatoes and fruits so that it's more resistant to pesticides. And each time we genetically alter these foods, the nutrient value has gone down considerably in these foods. So more and more of our food that we eat that is being altered by the genes has bringing a decreased nutritional value to the food that we eat. So there you are, you're eating, you say, geez, I'm loading up on my fruits and vegetables. Well, you'd have to eat 2 to 3 times as much as you did 20 years ago to get the same nutrient value and vitamins and minerals and healthy things out of it. Now, that's a need for serious cause and concern. Something that's also been done is that around a lot of fruits and vegetables is a natural wax layer. Now that wax layer is part of the time-tested thing that vegetables have developed into to protect themselves. But then we come along and we develop and alter the wax layer so that when we spray pesticides on, these pesticides don't come off anymore. So this way they don't have to spray pesticides on your food so much. They only have to do it once during a growing season. Forget the fact that when you go home and you take that fruit and vegetable and you wash it, that the poisons don't come off because it's embedded in the wax. What's the concern of that? There's a big concern. You know, fruits and vegetables and grains and animals, they've been around for a very long time. And I think that they've probably been here longer, and they've set the platform for our arrival and our being here. And they have survived, and they've adapted, and they have changed and made themselves strong and nutritious. And then all of a sudden, we're thinking that we know better. Sometimes a little science can be a little problematic because we do not know what the long-term effect of genetically modified food is going to have. You know, a lot of it may, the resistance of these foods are not the same, so they might become wiped out or blighted. We know that a lot of times cross-pollination between the genetically modified seeds and that they're making now is altering what is naturally occurred in the world for a long time. We really need to consider and take a look at, as an American, as a concerned about your own health, why is it that the rest of the world says no, while we know better and we say yes to this technology? Now, it's not as if I don't believe that there is such a thing through better living through modern chemistry, because I think that we can, but I think that we need to tread cautiously when it comes to our food supply and what that's going to do on our health. Also, when it comes to meats, I mean, you really need to think your meats and cut down on the frequency and the amount of meat products that you're eating because of what's called bioaccumulation. Just like the reason why they say, oh, you shouldn't have tuna fish more than once every 2 weeks. And the reason is because of bioaccumulation. The toxins that start at the small fish that eat the big fish, that eat the big fish, that eat the bigger fish, that eventually the tuna eats, the toxicity that is at the bottom of the food chain bioaccumulates to the surface. And these forms of animals have accumulated toxic response in there. So if you eat them frequently, you're taking in much more poisons than you would if you ate something at the bottom of the food chain, such as fruits and vegetables and what is on the bottom of that pyramid, okay? So we really need to cut down on that form of animal products and animal intake. The other bad thing is that, you know, we give the animals tremendous amount of antibiotics to keep them resistant of disease before we put them to rest. So this makes it so that they're, you know, supposedly healthier until we need them. The problem is that these antibiotics are also carried over in the food and are measurable in our systems, and is one reason why there is this whole antibiotic-resistant bacteria now, because we're taking in low levels of antibiotics all of the time on a regular basis, so that when you need it, when you need to take something, it's not working. So SARS and these bacteria and these diseases that you get when you're in the hospital, these resistant diseases are frequently traced to the fact that you're being medicated as we speak. The other thing, which is a real big issue, is that there's a tremendous amount of estrogens and hormones being fed to meat and in the dairy industry. These estrogens may yield a greater production, but what happens is that they're making it so that there's the onset of menses earlier in younger girls. There is problems with men as far as cancers. There's a major rise in male cancers across the board in the past 30 years, and there's a corresponding rise with the toxins and the hormones associated with our industrial use. There's also a correlation between autism, which has been on the rise, and the amount of toxicity in our environment. There's not a singular cause, but there's a spooky correlation between these avenues of correlation. What we're finding now is that we're an over-medicated society. And it's not that medications are bad. In fact, I believe in medication, and I believe in the judicious use of medicines. I deal a lot with an older population set as far as I have a lot of Medicare patients, geriatric patients that come in. So we deal with a lot of geriatric medicine. And frequently when they come in, and I'll have them write down a list of the prescriptions that they're taking. Now, when you're taking prescription medicine, there is, the list of side effects is the couple pages that they're on there, that come with the medicine. It's almost spooky. It's like it helps this, but, these are the list of side effects that go with it. Many times we have to weigh out the good versus the bad, so we have to say the medicine and the potential negative effect of it far outweigh the side effects, so we're going to go with it. So they find that when there's one or two medicines, that the likelihood of getting a side effect is only about 10% if the person is taking it for a short duration, but if you're taking it over long periods of time, the likelihood that you're going to have side effects is increased. What they found is that people that have 7 or 8 prescription medicines that they're on, there's a 100% chance that they're going to be experiencing negative side effects from their medicine protocol. So anytime a patient comes in to see me that is on that many different forms of medicines, needs to investigate with their family physician or specialist, because a lot of times all of these medicines on an individual basis are clear and indicated, and that's fine. But when you get into so many, the body cannot help to regulate itself and adjust itself because there's so much chemical intervention that we're not clear about, that we don't know about, that is, just unsettling. So something that we've witnessed also is that there's a tremendous increase in mental age-related diseases and disorders, and Alzheimer's is on the increase, senile dementia is on the increase, memory-related problems and clarity of thought issues. A lot of these are toxicity-related, and so we're getting more and more of them because toxic accumulation is occurring within the nerves and the coverings of the nerves of the brain. I mentioned to you before, which was a pet nutrient in the past. I said what I thought would be helpful as a preventative cure for Alzheimer's was phosphatidylcholine complex, because it was involved in neurotransmission and helps with the acetylcholine conversion to acetylcholine esterase, which happens at the synapse to help your brain function better. What they find now is they've isolated from colostrum. Colostrum is the initial milk that comes out prior to regular milk. This is that the baby gets, or the calf gets, for the first day, possibly day and a half of suckling. Within there are immune factors that the animals and humans carry over throughout the course of their total adult life and that are measurable. They've isolated a polypeptide in there that helps to eliminate amyloid plaque buildup in the brain. Now, amyloid plaque is basically a garbage that is accumulated in brain cells. And they found that the more amyloid plaque is in there, the more dysfunction happens within the neurotransmission. So it's failing because it's like an oil filter that is clogged. I mean, it might work, the oil filter might work, but it's not working as efficiently as when there's a nice smooth flow. So why is it some days where, some days you're thinking and your cognition is clear and you're like attacking, other days is he there today? Is he not there today? Is he out to lunch? Is he not out to lunch? It's the problem is always there, but the transmission may be abnormally influenced. So there is a nutrient that is available now called Cognosure, which is a derivative of that polypeptide. It's basically a sublingual chewable tablet that clinically measures a diminution of amyloid plaque in the brain. And that is something that I believe is going to be of extreme clinical significance in our, in helping to keep your brain toxicity at a low level. Because toxins or poisons accumulate in your fat, they accumulate in your liver, and they have a special affinity for nerve cells. So the more garbage out that we have, the better off that you're going to be. You're going to need to start to consider taking some nutrients, because even though if you don't have a normal, natural, healthy diet, if you do have that, it's not going to be enough because the food doesn't contain what it should be. Going organic is the way to go. It's worth every single dime that you have to spend on organic foods, which they're making more reasonable now. It's very, very important to get out of your way and start taking in the fuel that's going to be processed appropriately, because you get to a point where I want your quality of life to be good. I want your functioning physiologically to be good. I want you to maximize your health, and I don't want you to get diseases and disorders which are environmentally and lifestyle related that are many, many now. If you're not going to just be rewarded in the short term, but in the long term. And your kids don't know what to do. They learn by doing. Your children learn by what happens in your family. Do you want them to live long and healthy? Well, you better start feeding them and show them and leading the way for living the lifestyle that is going to be preventative and not convenient. We're moving into convenience as a lifestyle at the expense of nutritional health, well-being. Stretching, exercising, well-rested, eliminate worry from your life. We're a society that is doing a lot of unnecessary worrying. There's a lot of real worries out there, but not as much as outside of our country. So we have the God-given right to stay strong and be well. And for Natural Health Care Alternative, I'm Dr. James R. Golding. Thanks for watching.